Unmuting your body's energy after narcissistic abuse. If you grew up under a narcissistic parent, then you may have had to shut down the natural energies of your body just to survive. Today we're going to talk about how to get it back. Look closely at any human being and there'll be an internal ball of energy that is theirs alone. We feel it, we don't think it, and it colors everything we do. It's what propels us through life. What varies is how easily we can tap into and live from this source within. Typically, this energy is also felt and lived from by your parents, so you were encouraged to do the same yourself. It becomes a place inside you get to orient to. A child in such a family gets to fall in love with their body's capabilities as their parents metaphorically clap along. As you grow up, you get to structure your life around the directions that this energy pushes you in. What feels physically good when you do it or after you do it? Whatever it is, then you want to do more of it. Well, a scapegoat child to a narcissistic parent isn't so lucky. Their parent sees the child's connection to their internal source of bodily energy as a challenge to the parent's authority. This is because such a parent needs to feel dominant over their scapegoat child, and the child's own energy will inevitably deviate from what the parent demands of them. Most parents can respond flexibly in such a situation so that they don't ruin the child's connection to their own energy. But a narcissistic parent more rigidly asserts their authority by squelching their child's energy. Such a parent meets their child's expressions of their own energies with overwhelming force. The parent seeks to frighten the child from acting how the child feels. Maybe it's a sharp word or even a physical attack. Whatever the means, the end is to get the child to obey the parent rather than what the child's own body wants. The parent may then keep watch over the child to continually reinforce their rule. They may constantly reprimand the child for acting up and regard the child as a troublemaker. In today's video, I discuss how and why the scapegoat child must divorce themselves from their own bodily energies. They learn to react to their narcissistic parent at all times. Acting upon the child's own initiative becomes very dangerous with such a parent. Scapegoat children survive by divesting themselves of their bodily energy. This leaves them feeling like a husk inside, but that's what their parent requires. And I will then offer a systematic plan for adult scapegoat survivors to re-engage and reincorporate the energy source that is really their birthright. Well, my name is Reid, and I'm a licensed practicing psychotherapist in California and a scapegoat survivor myself. I've worked to understand what helps scapegoat survivors know that they are now safe to unmute in their lives. And by unmute, I'm talking about unmuting what you really want, what you really need, and what you really think about what's going on around you. And this has led me to what I call the 3 pillars of recovery. Pillar number 1 is to make sense of what happened so that you know it wasn't your fault. Pillar number 2 is to gain distance from narcissistic abusers today and closeness with safe people. And pillar number 3 is to live in defiance of your narcissistic parents' rules. Taken together, these 3 pillars empower you to know that you can now be safe to unmute and live with the volume up on who you really are. And I'm excited to announce that I've just released on Amazon a treatment manual for therapists who treat adult scapegoat survivors of narcissistic parents. It's called Therapy with Scapegoat Survivors of Narcissistic Parents. Use control mastery theory to know and do what works. So too many times I've heard from scapegoat survivors who've encountered therapists who either don't believe that they could be treated this poorly in their own family or don't empathize with how emotionally dangerous the good things in life can seem for scapegoat survivors. I wrote this book to explain exactly how the role of scapegoat child develops in the narcissistic family, how the only way to cope is to believe that you are defective and undeserving, and how to effectively treat such individuals so that they can gradually find it safe in the treatment relationship to entertain and eventually believe that they are deserving and adequate people today. But it's not just a book for therapists. It's written in plain English with a ton of examples that may resonate with you. Even if you're not a therapist and you're curious how the process of therapy should work, I encourage you to check it out. You can find the link to the book in the description box below or by clicking here. When using your body equals challenging your parent's authority. A narcissistic parent puts their scapegoat child in an impossible position. The parent unconsciously insists that it's the child who is worthless instead of the parent themselves. Then they treat the child as such and expect the child to act accordingly. The child learns that when they think, act, and feel worthless, that their parent seems to be more psychologically intact. And the child's right. A narcissistic parent needs their scapegoat child to inhabit the parent's cast-off feelings of worthlessness so that they, the parent, do not have to. But the job is never done for the child because of how thin-skinned their parent is. Although they have sequestered their own feelings of worthlessness into their scapegoat child, they remain vulnerable to painful reminders. When someone else doesn't submit to their overinflated sense of dominance, they risk collapse into powerless humiliation. The child also learns this suffocating lesson and must tread very carefully. The child's own spontaneous and autonomous bodily energy ruins their ability to embody the parent's worthlessness and makes the child less willing to submit to the parent's control. Both outcomes threaten their parent's availability to them. And if their parent is not psychologically intact, no matter the cost of that intactness to the child, then the child has no world to share with that parent. Enter feeling like nobody to no one for the child. This is an unsurvivable state that must be avoided. So the child must live as though their parent's well-being is more important than their own. If the child's own bodily energy threatens their parent's well-being, then it must be sacrificed. Scapegoat children grow to be wary of their own bodily, spontaneous expressions. These have only ended in trouble for them, and an association starts to form. It goes something like, when I am how I want to be, I'm bad and I cause trouble for the people I love. Now the scapegoat child is on the course to distancing themselves from their bodily existence. The following case example makes use of two characters from Game of Thrones if you're familiar. If you've read the books or seen the TV show, then you'll have an idea of who each of these characters are, though they're put in a kind of vastly different situation than on the TV show. Arya was born to a narcissistic mother named Cersei. They could not have been more different. Cersei believed everyone around her owed her their obedience. She held her chin high and looked down the bridge of her nose at them. Her eyes darted about as she searched for possible threats to this presumed dominance. If she found such a threat in another's lack of deference to her, then she'd grow very vindictive. She'd try to find this person's weakness and exploit it. For example, after their initial courtship, she found her husband's passion for his work to take away from her feeling like the most important person to him. So she began to complain that he was a terrible husband who would callously abandon her whenever he felt like it. Her husband's own early life had been difficult, and he coped by trying to make others happy with him no matter what. So when his wife complained about him like this, he grew intensely worried. Instead of paying attention to the physical and mental exhilaration that he got from his work, he began to associate it with the bad feelings his wife induced in him for pursuing it. Over time, he grew anxious about always being in the place she expected him to be, regardless of the importance he found in what he was doing. Arya was as strong-willed as they come for a child. Her energy and zest for life was brimming from the time she learned to walk. She couldn't get enough of exploring the world. If she was in her living room, she'd crawl everywhere, inspecting whatever had caught her eye. It gratified her to touch and feel the different textures all around her. She had a motor inside her that only stopped running once she was exhausted, and at that point she'd just slump into a content slumber. When Arya turned 3 years old, Cersei had enough of Arya's continual refusals to obey her commands. Cersei believed that she was locked in a battle of wills with her daughter, and only she could win. Now, when Arya darted around the room to explore what caught her eye and do what her inner motor wanted, Cersei would scowl and told her to come back to her side. Initially, Arya ignored her, so her mother escalated. She grew enraged, rushed over to Arya, wrenched her by the arm to spin her around, and got right up in her face. She said, "You are going to listen to me when I speak to you. I won't put up with your constant disrespect. Do you understand me?" Arya was dazed with a confusing mix of anger and fear. She was furious to have her own delightful energetic release interrupted like this. She also feared how much her mother seemed to hate her in that moment. It felt like being branded with a poking iron on her soul. Survival had to win out for her, and she squelched her anger and began to cry while saying she was sorry. Her mother felt like her authority had been restored, and she relented in her attack on Arya. These moments only had to continue a few more times before Arya learned to check her bodily impulses. They were just too costly to follow. Living with a muted body. The scapegoat child's inner energies get evicted but can't go completely away. The child may unconsciously use the psychological mechanism of projection to find the energy that is too dangerous for them to embrace in other people. So they may marvel at the athletic feats of their peers in grade school while feeling completely devoid of such abilities in themselves. This can be the case even if the child is substantially physically gifted. The energy that exists in them and poses such a grave threat to their relationship to their parent must be found externally. Now that energy and the part of themselves that holds it continues to exist, but it exists in the only way possible, in someone other than themselves. The scapegoat child is left in an ongoing state of physically felt depletion. Once they master the ability to project their own energies into those around them, they are safe, but they also have to be empty. Without the energy needed within to tell them what they want to do, then they must be told what to do. Otherwise, they'd be in a state of disoriented directionlessness. Physical activity can grow to feel like a chore. The child may worry whether they'll be able to perform in gym class or on their athletic teams. They may just want to get these experiences over with without undue embarrassment. Worries about their physical well-being can also easily emerge. If the child gets a nick or scrape, it may feel internally disastrous. Instead of having the fortune of knowing their own physical robustness, it can feel like they're always falling apart. They may readily seek solace from their narcissistic parent. Doing so further distances the child from their own inner energy and gratifies the parent's need to feel like they are better than the child. Finding agreement with others becomes imperative. If someone who has full access to their energy opposes them, then the very thing they've done to survive, that is, eject their own energy, makes them very susceptible to harm. So, staying on the right side of others becomes another tactic that the child must adopt to survive. So, the scapegoat child may conclude that they're not courageous. That itself may hurt their self-worth, even though it's not true. As the child physically matures, new forms of energy are supposed to emerge, just biologically speaking. In adolescence, the energy towards sexual desire and attraction become more prominent. And these energies can feel alien and even scary to the scapegoat adolescent. They're used to distending themselves from their bodies, and these sorts of energies powerfully connect them back. The scapegoat adolescent may disavow their sexual and romantic interest in males or females. It may be the only way to stay away from the force of these energies. The child may also find ways to problematize their bodies. Doing so makes it impossible to use the emitted energies from their body. They may perceive themselves to be too skinny, too fat, too ugly, too weak, etc. Now their relationship to their bodies is one of fixing what's supposedly wrong. They implicitly reason that once they fix themselves, then they'll be able to use their body. It's a promise that never gets fulfilled. Well, let's go back to Arya. As a teenager, she struck a much different note than she did as a toddler. She carried immense tension in her body most of the time, and she mostly kept to herself at school. The wild energy of her peers in the hallways between classes would frighten her. Whenever she was called upon to use her body, it felt like turning the ignition on a car that didn't want to start. Gym class meant overriding her inner stillness to do what she was supposed to do to get a decent grade. She had devoted herself to her schoolwork. It seemed like an endeavor that was safe to pursue somehow. In her classes, she would schedule out her time after school, and it was gratifying to see her map out how much she was going to study that night. Instead of feeling alive from the inside out, she could only take some pleasure in enacting her very formidable work ethic. Life, for Arya, became a constant test of whether she would do as much work as she set out to do. Arya recoiled in disgust when she'd see her body in the mirror, and she couldn't pinpoint exactly what was so repugnant, but she hated seeing what she saw. Her disgust-filled reaction to her body made it impossible to welcome and use the energies it provided. Arya's state spared her from the explosive retaliation that Cersei used to level at her in childhood. Of course, Cersei still found reasons to devalue, deprive, and domineer Arya. She no longer saw Arya's energy as a threat to her own dominance. A plan to unmute and live from your body's energy. If it were possible to think certain thoughts, breathe certain breaths, or assume certain positions and instantly regain access to your bodily energy, then that probably would have happened a long time ago. The processes that I'm describing today happen too early and often to change quickly. I think it's very important to appreciate this fact in order to effectively recover your body's energy. This is because it will likely take many, many repetitions over many days, months, and it may be years before you get to live from that energy again in its fullness. I say this not to discourage, but so that if you start applying the principles below and nothing seems to be changing, that you might marshal some patience and hope towards yourself nonetheless. I think acceptance and commitment therapies, or ACT's, approach to human suffering can be helpful here. This model of therapy says that it's our insistence on feeling certain feelings and thinking certain thoughts before we can live the way we most value that is in fact our biggest problem. The freedom in this model is that we can all discern and commit to what we value in life. But the catch is that we have to be willing to experience whatever thoughts and feelings arise as we do so. I can't think of a better frame of mind with which to approach recovering your bodily energy. You can determine that you value this for yourself, then you can plan a set of actions that reflect putting this value into action in your life. You can't, or no one can, choose whether you feel better after taking these steps, however. And if you can accept this and proceed anyway, then you'll be doing all there is to do to put yourself back in connection to your energy. And that's, I think, all that anyone can ask of themselves. If you'd like to understand more about this principle from ACT and how you can apply it to working on the beliefs of being defective and undeserving, then you might check out my free webinar called How to Defy the Narcissist's Two Biggest Rules. And in it, you'll learn how to chart your course towards freedom from these once needed beliefs while accepting whatever comes your way in the process. And this, I think, is the key to consistent progress in recovery. Okay, the plan. First, how would you like to use your body's energy? I think we all have specific activities that we're drawn towards, some pursuit or sport that makes sense. Of course, the very activities that you have a natural propensity towards may have been too dangerous to pursue, psychologically speaking. So if, for example, you like to run and running fast led to feeling pride in yourself, then that would go against that belief in being defective. In childhood, it would be too dangerous to flout this rules for the reasons I've covered earlier. The very act of running and being in touch with your own energy might also feel dangerous. That felt danger is what you're in fact exposing yourself to in this plan. As you commit to an activity that makes sense to you and do it on a regular basis, you see that the old dangers no longer occur. This is one half of the battle. The other half is that connecting to your body's energy was never rewarded by your parent in the way that it should have been. So the association to doing this now can be one of feeling alone and unloved. The goal here is to endure such feelings when they arise, Talk to someone about them and proceed with your activity. It's critical to proceed because this lets you, over time, find out that it can feel good now to use your body's energy. You can create new associations to what it means, but first, it may likely take moving through this post-traumatic legacy of being turned away from when you connected to your body's energy as a kid. 2, how would you like to fuel your body? Well, another important but sometimes overlooked aspect to reconnecting with your body's energy can be nourishment. Putting the right food in the right amounts positions your body to function as effectively as possible. This itself can be an act of care towards your body and its energy. Scapegoat survivors who've had to problematize their bodies may have a complicated relationship with food. If you've had to see your body as disgusting, then what you choose to put in it may have had to reflect this belief. So the decision of what and how much to eat can be fraught. If you say, don't eat what you had intended, or more than intended, then it may feel like you're becoming more disgusting. So committing to a practice of eating nourishing food in the right amounts can seem like playing with sort of psychological fire in this regard. If this applies, then you might commit to having patience and compassion with yourself as these thoughts and feelings arise. It's unlikely anyone with this history could will themselves to immediately think differently about nourishment. But it may be possible to commit to eating healthy food in the right amounts while allowing for whatever imperfections in doing so occur. And 3, who lets you use your energy with them? It's essential to find friendships and relationships that endorse your connection to your own energy. This lets you know that you're no longer all alone when you tap into this inner source. It can counter the earlier traumatic lesson that your body's energy comes at the cost of feeling connected to. As you risk being aware of and expressing your energy in front of others, you get to gauge their reaction. Are they neutral to affirming? Well, that would be a good sign and counteractive to the disapproval you might be accustomed to. One way this might unfold is by spending time with the people you do your chosen activity with. These people are likely to welcome your use of energy in these ways. Well, let's illustrate this plan with going back to Arya once more. She got herself through high school and college. Then she moved far away from her hometown and started a job as a ranger in a nearby state park. She loved introducing the wonders of this park to new visitors. In the first few years in her new life, she lived with that same tension and distance from her bodily energy. But in her day-to-day, there were few people who mistreated her. And this lack of threat in her immediate environment gave her room to reflect on how she was living. She wondered why she felt so much tension all the time, why she saw every physical undertaking to be a task to complete rather than something to enjoy and relish, and why she recoiled every time she looked at herself in the mirror. She decided to seek therapy and brought these questions in. Her therapist, named Mary, really liked how targeted and motivated Arya was. Arya seemed to have a formidable presence, yet seemed conflicted about this. Mary told Arya that sometimes when her clients have goals but aren't clear what's holding them back, that understanding her history might help. So she asked Arya to describe what it was like in her home growing up. Arya explained how watched she always felt by her mother, how she could never be comfortable in her own skin around her. Mary listened with a growing sense of sadness at the way Arya had been treated as a child. She determined that her mother seemed incapable of offering the kind of tenderness a child would need to feel loved. Instead, her mother seemed to have demanded complete compliance from Arya. Perhaps that was why Arya seemed conflicted about her strength. Mary explained all of this to Arya to offer her a new frame of reference from which to understand her current challenges. Arya felt a relief to know that she was not wired the wrong way. Rather, she was experiencing challenges that stemmed from her doing what she had had to do to survive a domineering and most likely narcissistic mother. Arya and Mary discussed Arya's difficulty engaging with her own physical energies. Mary asked what activities she would do if she could, and Arya said without hesitation, fencing. She explained that she'd always found sword fighting to be her favorite parts in movies and TV shows, and she'd like to learn how to do so in fencing. Mary affirmed her desire in this respect and asked what was holding her back. Arya said that she gets too stiff in individual sports, and she'd probably just never gain traction if she took a lesson. Mary said that this could be very true, but that it was also true that it had been very dangerous to tap into her physicality as a kid with her mother's vigilance constantly over her. Mary suggested that Arya's reservations might reflect her employing a strategy that used to be fundamental to staying safe as a kid, but that, however, the strategy may have outlived its usefulness. Mary went on to ask Arya what she would say if Mary could offer her a way to start fencing today, and Arya said, "Well, I'm listening." Mary introduced the principle of finding a value and committing to it while accepting whatever experience comes along the way. Arya said that she doubted she'd even get anything out of lessons, given how frozen she felt physically. Mary said that could be part of her experience that she accepts and attends the lesson anyway. Arya saw the shift in perspective that Mary was offering. Instead of making her feelings into reasons why she would or wouldn't do something, she'd just choose what she wanted to do and then notice the feelings along the way. Thus began Arya's trek back to her bodily energy. It would take years for her to feel like she could safely tap into that energy, but the work and the wait were well worth it. Well, if you have found yourself sort of frozen internally and unable to access your own bodily energies, then I hope today's video was of some use. And I also want to mention that if you'd like a low-cost option to understand, those 3 pillars of recovery and apply them in your own life, then I suggest checking out my Rise and Reclaim Healing Toolkit for Scapegoat Survivors. In it, you'll receive my book called Growing Up as a Scapegoat Child to Narcissistic Parents, A Guide to Healing. And this book is a comprehensive and in-depth guide to those 3 pillars of recovery. If you're a scapegoat survivor, I think you'll likely find a lot of your own experience in these pages. And most important, you'll see how to apply the 3 pillars so that you can begin to reclaim the quality of life that you deserve. In the toolkit, you will also receive a worksheet that asks you to brainstorm ways to apply the pillars on a monthly basis in your life. You can find the link to the toolkit in the description box below or by clicking here. And lastly, if you'd like a written summary of what I discussed in today's video, then you can go to my Substack. Substack.com is a platform for people to post their writing. It allows others to read and comment on the writing. And I know that a lot of material gets discussed in these videos and that it can be hard to keep in mind once you turn the video off. That's why I decided to post the essays that these videos are based upon on this Substack. Plus, I put written summaries of past popular videos already up on that site. So there's plenty of content to dig into if you're inclined. And along with this written content, you'll be joining a community of fellow scapegoat survivors. You'll get to share your own thoughts and experiences in the comments section with people who understand. It's another great way to build a strong community for those who deserve support in knowing that they never were defective nor undeserving. It's just what they were forced to believe as a child. So if you think it can be helpful, you can also find the link to the Substack in the description box below or by clicking here. Well, I want to thank everyone for your continued support of this channel and the resources around it, and that it means a ton to just see people posting their own stories and connecting to other stories in the comments section here on YouTube, also in the growing comments section on Substack. And yeah, with that, I look forward to posting again next Friday. Take care.